All right, so the 2023 NHL draft is in the books, and Adam Denker from Locked On Lightning and I are here to break it all down. New episode of Locked On NHL is coming at you.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On NHL podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. From Locked On Avalanche, I am Chris Maselli, and from Locked On Lightning, he is Mr. Adam Denker. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. All right, sir, another draft is in the books, and a lot of people were looking forward to this one for a number of reasons. Obviously, the name at the top, but there were several names below him, talking about Connor Bedard, that were really enticing. And you talked to Hattie Kalakash, who is our NHL prospects guru, and he listed upwards of 50 guys that could potentially be number one round picks. So people were looking forward to this draft. It was deep. And you saw that in some people maybe reaching for some guys because they feel like they're a number one pick. And I want to say consensus first round draft picks for some reason plummeting, and guys getting insane value even late into the third round. So overall, I mean, I know you were working this draft a lot, but what was your takeaways just standing back and taking a look at this draft?
Well,
even though your Tampa Bay Lightning were pretty much sitting on their hands for day one.
Well, Chris, I mean, you look at the numbers, just 15 different countries being represented in this draft says it all. I think my favorite part of the draft, though, was the first Italian goaltender to be drafted. That was pretty cool to see.
Right.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I feel like it was one of those drafts you mentioned, guys falling and others rising. I think that really, when you look at that, the reason for that is because as what we've seen the last couple of years, and at this point kind of is a given with the NHL draft, is there's a plethora of talent. And I feel like if teams like a guy, they'll go after him. You know, they don't have to go after a guy just because he's the best player remaining. You know, if they really have fallen in love with a guy through interviews and how they worked out of the combine or just how they fit into the scheme of the team, you know, they'll go that way, I think, other than maybe the top player left on the board at that point.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think, you know, the I don't want to say consensus, but like the first thought that a lot of people have is best player on the board, take him. And that's not always the case. It is, like you said, that's a very good point of, you know, who fits the system. And if in the eyes of like the media and the fans, it's a little bit of a reach, we'll really dig into why they took a specific guy. And is it a reach for them? But even having said that, I think there were some guys and one team in particular that did reach. We'll get to that a little bit later. But for me, I think that the one thing that I think surprised everybody, there was a couple surprising moments. Zero trades in the first round of the draft. None. And I think, again, like this is something where you have to say, like, on the surface, I can't believe it. And then when you kind of take another step back, like, okay, because this draft is so deep, I think every team saw value and every team had like probably like a 1, 2, 3, 4 ranking of guys, and somebody was going to be there that could bring value to that franchise, and it wasn't feasible for them to trade and drop back. So yeah, it is surprising, like I said, on the surface, that you didn't see trades, but man, when you have this much talent in a first round and beyond, that's the thing. It's not just the first like 15 or 20 picks. It was the first 45 or 50.
Yeah.
So, you know, even when you have a team like your guys, didn't have one in the first round, but they made the deal with my guys and they got an excellent value pick at 37. Where is he? Because I keep forgetting his name.
Ethan Gauthier.
Gauthier, yeah. Ethan Gauthier, yeah. So again, he was one of those guys that some people had mocking like early 20s. So yeah, I mean it's not really that surprising to me that there were no trades. But do you feel like even despite that, there was going to be a trade or two somewhere along the line?
I really thought that Calgary was going to dangle that 16th overall pick. I thought if what we saw in the last couple of weeks of them kind of just saying, yeah, we're waving the towel and ready for the rebuild. I thought they were going to at least maybe trade a couple of draft picks just to maybe see what they could get. But that wasn't the case. They stood right where they were. But yeah, I mean, you kind of see, I think that's what we're going to see in the next couple of years, especially I off the top of my head, I'm sure there's a lot, more better classes that are going to be coming out in coming years. I think what we say, I think the cliche is that the talent's always getting better every year with the NHL draft. But yeah, I think we might see less and less picks though, Chris, over the next trades over the next couple of years, because yeah, like you said, teams aren't exactly pressured to move up or down. So, whether you're a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning who has barely any picks, or like the Detroit Red Wings who has a million, I feel like to a certain extent, unless you get a guy no one's ever heard of, I think that any pick is a good pick.
Yeah, definitely. And especially in the first round. I mean, I again, and we'll get to it. I think there was a couple of reaches. Not that those players that they got are bad, but at the spot they were picking, you have to see like, man, there's other guys on the board that are better and could improve your team a little bit quicker than what you selected. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But another thing that kind of stood out to me was question was going around on how many defensemen were going to be taken in the first round. And you heard maybe anywhere from like 5 to 6, maybe 7, but there were 8 D-men taken in that round. And I think this goes to kind of the way the league is as far as that position is kind of transitioning into defensemen are as important offensively as they are defensive. They're always going to be important defensively. Yeah. It's in their position title. But now, like, with this whole kind of new wave of offensive defensemen, and you saw a lot, there were defensive defensemen clearly, but almost all of these guys have an offensive category to their game. And I think more teams are putting like an emphasis on that. And you saw it in 8 guys, in 8 defensemen being drafted, the first one going to number 5 with David Reinbacher, which to me was a reach for Montreal.
Apparently, Carey Price thought so too, because he couldn't remember the guy's name.
So, what do you think to that? Because there's a defenseman on your team who's one of the best in the league, kind of for his defensive ability.
Yeah.
And there's a guy on my team who's kind of like this new wave, and Cale Makar of that hybrid guy of great defenseman and has the offensive capabilities. So what do you take away from kind of this many D-men going in the first round?
I mean, I like it. I don't have a problem with it. I think that maybe some forwards that fell in this draft are going to feel differently about that. But it goes back actually to your guy. Everybody wants to play like Cale Makar. Everybody wants to get the next Cale Makar, or settle for the next Miro Heiskanen. So I think we're going to see more and more of that, especially now with the way these defensemen are playing these days. They're playing deeper in the zone. They're just not hanging back at the blue line taking slap shots. They're actually going into the high slot area. So I feel like we're going to see more and more of that. Unfortunately, and fortunately, depending on where your team is, you could potentially end up with a very good forward that fell, because we might very well see, like I said, with with what we've seen from Cal McCarr and Miro Hiskinen, we might see some teams get some diamonds in the rough with some forwards and benefit from this craze in the offensive defenseman.
Right. So let's get into some of the specifics and some of the specific picks that we liked, and then we'll get into ones that we didn't like. But first, we're going to hear from FanDuel. And take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. So you just bet $20 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets back. And you get that back win or lose. And that's $200 you can spend betting on everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run. What are some prop bets you would get for the Mets right now? Danky Dank. Anything?
I was waiting for you to ask me that question. I mean, I've been betting on the Mets every single night, and I wish this deal from FanDuel was a daily thing because I desperately need it because I've lost a ton of money on my Mets this year. But I would say a prop bet for the Mets is, I mean, I'm sure they have it. If you go looking, how many times they strike out as a team or leave runners in scoring position. So.
You got to bet. What do they say? Bet with your head, not with your heart, Denker. So you can do this all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is the official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, so things that we liked in terms of teams that we feel did well. For most teams, the NHL draft is always funny because it's really unlike the other sports because we can sit here right now and say like, oh, we like this pick, but we don't know for a couple of years how this draft class will really look. And that's the funny thing about the NHL draft. Like everything looks good right now. But in a few years, when these guys finally get their shot, is when you can start like picking apart saying like, yeah, that was a good pick. Nope, that wasn't a good pick. But for now, clearly, Connor Bedard is the golden boy of this draft class. You like to see what he's going to do, but I'm telling you, man, Oliver Moore, their pick at 19, for Blackhawk fans, I'm not going to say they should be as excited for Oliver Moore as Connor Bedard. Connor Bedard is, on another level, and that's another level of excitement. But Oliver Moore is right there, and I can't help but think, and I'm going to make this all about me, or I'm going to make it all about my team. Was kind of an emphasis for the Blackhawks going after Oliver Moore because he is so fast, and he is maybe the fastest guy in this draft class. So now, so I'm thinking, hey, Avs are built on speed, and they are, the one of the top two teams in the division. And what are teams in the division going to do? Model themselves after Colorado. And I think that's what Chicago is doing clearly with Bedard. You can't fault them for that pick, but for Oliver Moore, speed and to keep up with teams like Colorado. And he does that immediately. So I like what Chicago did in the first round. Anybody stand out to you that you felt did well?
I really liked what Columbus did. They had 8 draft picks and they drafted 4 centers. And, we all know when you watch the game of hockey as much as we do, it all starts from down the middle. And if you could get consistent good play from your center position, then it really kind of just works itself out to the wings. And I really like what Columbus did in the first 2 rounds. They went back to back with Michigan guys. Fantilli at 3 and then Brindley at 34. You can't go wrong. I feel like when you draft from Michigan in hockey, it's like drafting from Alabama in football. You can't really go wrong with that recipe or any SEC team. So, I would say high marks to Columbus. Now, whether or not they're going to trade those guys away in a couple of years is yet to be seen. But, if they could string it together, they got Johnny Gaudreau and Fantilli, and then Brindley kind of comes along in the next couple of years, and Laine. Laine's in Winnipeg. You have with Werenski as well. You kind of have a good core of guys. And Laine's there. I'm completely out of it, but yeah,
you're out of your mind right now.
You have a good basis, though. You have a good basis. It was because you brought up the Mets. I'm all frazzled now.
That's all I got to do is just bring up the Mets, and Denker loses all brain
hand starts to tremble. I really like what Columbus did. They still have a very good goaltending situation as well. So who knows how these guys will adjust in the coming years. They could come out and play very well in their rookie seasons, or it might take them a couple of years to figure it out. But yeah, I really like what Columbus did.
And Columbus would have been just fine taking Leo Carlsson at number 3.
Yeah.
And some people are like maybe surprised that Anaheim took him at number 2. Maybe it was just jarring because you didn't expect to hear that name, because everything was just like, this draft starts at 3. Bedard number 1, Fantilli's at number 2, and then let's see what happens. Likely Carlson at number 3, and then we'll see what happens after that. Carlson is no slouch. You know what I mean? Like he is a fantastic, fantastic player. And is it surprising to me that Anaheim went this route? Not really, because look what they did not that long ago, taking Mason McTavish. That was a surprise to a lot of people. So Anaheim just beats to their own drum. And like I said, it's not a bad pick at all. I just feel like some people were surprised because all you heard was Fantilli, and then after that. So I think they got a good guy with Carlson. Listen, Philadelphia. I don't. It's tough to say like a team got a steal at number 7, but Michkov is the real deal here, people. And there were draft rankings, not necessarily mocks, but there were rankings that had him at number 2. And skill-wise, he's definitely there. I think where teams got maybe a little bit afraid was just the Russian factor. And he's not going to be here for a few years. But if you're picking at the top of the draft, you're not going to be relevant for a few years.
Yeah.
So grab him, let him play his years in Russia, and then bring him back over here. Like Philadelphia had him fall into their lap. And everything you heard like from Danny Briere was they brought him in a couple times and he sold himself to Philly. He sold himself hard. He wanted to go there, and he kind of made it known, and they were kind of really taken back by how much he wanted to play for them, and they made it work, and he was sitting there. That, to me, was one of the bigger surprises that he fell to 7. He's going to be one of those guys where not every team above him, because Chicago's not going to be like, oh, we wish we took him at number 1.
Yeah.
You're going to have a few teams above where Philly picked thinking – we let that one slip by, without a doubt.
Yeah. I mean, you can't go wrong with guys like that as well. I really want to touch on, because it's been a while, real quick, but I mean, you can't help but sort of fantasize about what Connor Bedard brings to the Blackhawks now that they got Taylor Hall. I think we could agree that Blackhawks have been very aggressive in the last couple of days with some of their moves. And even today, they got the rights to Corey Perry as well. We look forward towards drafts and, what this Blackhawks team has had to endure with some controversy around them, trading away one of their stars and their captain probably not coming back and all this and that. I mean, talk about a quick turnaround. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to win the cup tomorrow, but I mean, are they are the Blackhawks back, or maybe like in the next 2 years back? We spoke about just recently this past year how the rebuild for Boston, and then they go out and they set all types of records. Are we going to possibly see something like that from the Blackhawks now that you got one of the best players in the generation since probably Connor McDavid?
Well, he's going to there's going to be some growing pains for him.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, immense, but there's definitely going to be some. Who's their goalie? So that's
That's the
not going to
problem.
help.
Yeah, that's the one problem.
But you like that they are surrounding him, kind of, not fully, but they're getting pieces to make it a little bit easier for him. It's not like, hey, you're the number one pick and all our eggs are in your basket right off the bat. That's a lot of weight to put on a kid like that, right? So they're bringing in guys like you Corey Perry. Like, to me, that's a move where it's like, you're not going to mess with the golden boy. Let's bring someone in who,
Josh
even though
Bailey, they got today too.
they did. You're right. They
Yeah.
got Bailey, obviously the Taylor Hall one, Nick Foligno.
So
They're
their
bringing
goalie
guys in.
situation is Peter Mrazek and Arvid Soderblom.
Yeah. Yep. There you go. So that's an issue, but that's, you can correct that address what you're addressing now, and then, make that something for the future. But I like what they're doing. And I think they're at least going to be a little bit more competitive. You're just not going to walk all over them like you were able to last year. And players, and we haven't even hit free agency yet.
I know.
So, some players who haven't signed yet see that, and they're like, hey, I'll go be a part of that. Might be a couple year project, but I'll be there, and I'll be a front row seat to watch this guy take the next step and be the next Connor McDavid. I'll do that. So yeah, I think it's impressive what they've done so far, definitely. And I just want to touch on Carolina, because man, did they get some good picks here. And they dropped back once in the third round. So Bradley Nadeau, first round, good pick, little undersized, but he's got a ton of skill. Excuse me. And then what they did in the third was they traded and dropped down a few picks. And with the 94th pick, I think that was the third to last pick in the third round, they get Jaden Perron, who a lot of people had ranked in their teens, and he almost dropped to 100. So Carolina, I thought, did a very good job as well. All right, what about the other side of this, and teams that maybe just you kind of think like, what are you doing? And I already mentioned Montreal at number 5, and again, like I don't feel like who they got in David Reinbacher is a bad pick. But when I said there's a team above Philly that's going to be like, what the heck did we do not taking Mishkov? It's Montreal.
Yeah.
I don't like, I thought that was a home run pick for them, and they let them slip by. And then the team right after that in Arizona did the same exact thing. I'll get to them next, but what do you think?
I kind of alluded to it before, but I'm still not sure what Calgary knows what they want to do, because you kind of saw the last couple of weeks that they have kind of sort of been in sell mode. And then today I kind of would, well, actually the other night I kind of figured, you're sitting at 16. If you're in sell mode, where's the chatter about offloading Lindholm? And so you can move yourself up. And I mean, we just got done talking about them. I mean, I think that would have been a perfect situation for Carolina. I don't know how you work out the money there, but at the same time, I mean, they got a ton of picks. They're a team that is probably 1 or 2 players away from winning a cup. And if I'm the GM of the Calgary Flames, I'm calling up Carolina after seeing how many picks they have. And you say you want Lindholm, you give us your best 3 or best 4. And so I feel like they kind of dropped the ball now, and now you kind of you've given teams kind of like a couple of moments to kind of breathe and figure out what they have and where they want to go in the offseason, and you kind of missed your moment to kind of just unfortunately swindle some teams in the NHL.
Yeah, and the pick that Calgary picked at 16 was Samuel Hanzik. Like, I think it was an okay pick. Like, I was not over the moon for that. There were some really good guys on the board that I think the direction that you're going, you're kind of like just selling off all these assets and you're starting over. You might want to start with someone that you can maybe rally around a little bit. He's not it. He's
Yeah.
not it. So that was a little bit surprising. Arizona, I mean, only Arizona can do what Arizona can do. Hattie, again, bring him up. One of his favorite guys in his draft is Dmitry Simashev. Absolutely loves him. And I think Hattie even kind of understands that. To take him at 6 to Arizona is a touch high. He's a good player, but good Lord. I mean, when you're picking 6 in this draft class, and again, you let Mishkov go by. And to me, I thought Ryan Leonard was made for either Arizona or specifically Philadelphia. I understand why Philadelphia didn't go with him because they really seemed like Mishkov, but I don't know. And then at 12, they take Daniil Boot, who, again, a fine player, but at 12 is way too high. And because it's Arizona, you're just like, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't shock me. 2 picks that were big reaches. And I don't feel like those guys are not going to improve that team right off the bat. And they had an opportunity to go get 2 guys that do that, and they didn't do it.
I mean, what's the alternative here, Chris, though, with Arizona? Do they call up San Jose, say, we'll give you 2 picks for your 4th? Or, I mean, was it more of a kind of just thinking too hard kind of deal where they were just trying to be too clever? And, we see this sometimes with teams in other sports, but I feel like in the NHL with the draft, at least it's kind of straightforward. Everybody, I feel like for the most part, and unless you really have the inside scoop on a player, everybody, I think all 32 teams are somewhat in agreement about every single guy.
Mm-hmm.
At least skill wise, obviously, like we said earlier, they have their favorites that maybe they'll reach for. But yeah, these were kind of a little bit of head scratchers. And
I mean, you need, you have, some talent there, obviously.
Yeah.
But you like your first pick is a defenseman. I don't know. I'm just of the mind of like the teams at the top need like skill and excitement.
Need a guy who the whole team could gravitate towards,
and to get butts in the seats.
Yeah, well, 5,000 butts.
So I thought they did poor in terms of what was there. I think they'll be fine players, but again, I think they did poor because of what was still available to them. I didn't like the Kraken pick. They got Eduardo, and I think you pronounce his last name Chalet. Kind of a tall, lanky guy. I don't know. I think he has talent, but I think that was a little bit of a stretch. And then I absolutely love the pick that Vegas made in David Edstrom because he was ranked like in the hundreds. So that's a terrible pick. And I couldn't be more thrilled that Vegas went with that one because I don't know what they were thinking. And I'm just fine with that. And I will say, to kind of bring it back to who made a good pick, because I just have the list in front of me. For Gabriel Perreault to drop to the Rangers at 23, they must have been rubbing their hands together like, oh boy, why did you let that happen? He's a great one. He's going to be a very, very good pick, and he should have went maybe 10 picks higher, and he fell on the Rangers' lap.
I liked the pick after the 21st pick with Minnesota, Charlie Stramel from Wisconsin.
Okay.
Big center, 6'2", 6'3", 222 pounds.
Big boy.
So there's no cooling period for this guy. He's ready to go.
And he's already got a beard.
Yeah.
Not like as, put together as mine. But he has a more like yours. I think he's more like your style of beard. Yeah.
Chris throwing shots on the last show.
I like the 26 pick by San Jose and Quentin Musty. I think that's, my Avalanche were picking right after them. I think that's a guy that the Avalanche wanted. So I think that was a good pick. And same thing with Tampa, kind of went the same route as Vegas with Easton Cowan. He was someone that was pretty far down. So that might have been the biggest reach of the first round. And I don't think many people are really kind of like focusing in on that because of the talent that's in this first round. But I would say Vegas stretched, and I would say the Maple Leafs stretched the most. Maybe, I was kind of tongue in cheek with Vegas. Like, I don't think Edstrom was in the hundreds, but I'm just going to throw that out there just because people know my disdain for that team. So
I think my favorite part, though, about this draft, Chris, was probably all the trades that were made.
After the first round?
Yeah, after the first round. I think everybody was a little bit too I wouldn't say cautious. I think they were overly cautious just because, like we said, there was a lot of talent in the first round, and multiple teams had multiple draft picks.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at it this way, and maybe you might disagree, but I'd rather have 2 picks in the first round than 1 in the top 5, I think. Unless it's a generational class where there's 5 guys that are going to completely be the next, this guy's going to come out and have a bona fide chance to win the Calder.
Right.
So
it's a good point. Yeah. I mean, top 5, I mean, it's a good top 5, but if you gave me that option, top 5 pick, not number 1, because if it was number 1, I'm taking number 1. Anything after, like say 2, 3, 4, or 5, or 2 other picks in the first round, that's a tough question because, man, like I said, the top 5 talent should all have been home runs, not who was picked, just ranked top 5.
Right.
But yeah, 5 through 32 is still pretty darn good for this draft class. So it's going to be exciting to see a lot of these guys develop and kind of circle back in a couple of years and see what worked and what did not. So that's where we stand. Free agency around the corner. So that's what's coming up next. I love it. Love the off season. All right. That's going to be it for Denker and I. Mr. Denker and myself are stepping away from the Thursday episode of Locked On NHL. We're still going to be doing our individual shows. I've still got Locked On Avs. He's still got Locked On Lightning. I do like a lot of things behind the scenes for Locked On, which takes up a lot of time, and what you do, and where you work in the sports world, it takes up a lot of your time. So it got to be a lot. So we finished the season and finished the draft, and now we're handing it over to, I don't know who. I think they did get a couple other hosts, but this one's going to be it for Denker and I. So end of an era here, sir. We've done it for 3 years, I think.
3 years, yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know what? I'm sure something will pop up eventually, and Gil Martin will always have us on his Monday segment 100%. And I'm sure at some point we'll do crossovers. So if you guys are feeling nostalgic, please go ahead and follow Locked On Avs, Locked On Lightning. Thanks for letting us rank every team every week, even though there was a lack there of movement. But we had a blast doing it. So
yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
a lot of fun. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, for the past few years, especially on the Thursday episode. And yeah, definitely, like Adam said, follow us on our individual shows. We have a crossover. We do crossovers all the time, our show and your show. So we'll do that.
Yeah.
So we're not going anywhere. We're, in the scheme of Locked On, just for the Thursday episode. You'll have new hosts starting next week. So good luck to whoever that is.
Yeah.
You got a lot to live up to. I can tell you that.
Grow beards. That's my advice.
All right, everyone. Thank you again for tuning in. It's been fun. And we'll see you over in Colorado and over in Tampa Bay. Have a good one.